this thing. Okay, I'll go ahead and get this started. This is the Design Review Board meeting for the City of Gig Harbor for September 22nd, 2022. And we usually start with a roll call. So I'll start by, and I'll just call out your name. You say aye, as opposed to guessing on when to speak up. Darren Filand, John.
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
Brienne. Is
Aye.
it Brienne? It's Brienne, right?
Yep, you got it.
Okay, and then Marlene.
Aye.
Okay, and then staff. We'll start with Jeremy.
Aye.
Okay, and then Michelle.
Aye.
Okay, and I think that's it for a roll call. We'll ask the applicant to introduce himself when the time comes. Okay, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. We have two. We have one from June 9th, way back early summer, and then August 25th. We'll start with the June 9th. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Been seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll call for the question. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, the minutes of June 9th, 2022 have been approved. And then John, what I'll do is I'll defer to you on the approval of the minutes for August 25th, since you were the chair that night and I was not in attendance.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for the previous meeting. Sorry, I got attacked by a puppy as you said that. So any comments on that? Any approval? Anybody on approval?
I'll second.
Minutes are approved.
Okay, call for question. All in favor of approving the minutes for August 25th, 2022, say aye.
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 And Amy, that was an aye from you.
Yes.
Okay. All right, those minutes are approved. So we can move on from the minutes. And then we'll basically move on to our agenda items. So we'll start with our announcement of the application, and then we'll move on to some appearance fairness comments we got to make. So this is Craig Deaver, and this is the applicant proposes to divide an existing vacant 5.84 acre parcel into 8 single-family residential lots, and this is the PAR preliminary plat. So we'll start with, this is an open public meeting, and this is an open public meeting, but not really a public hearing. And I don't know if we have anybody from the public that is logged in. So I'll peruse through this, since we may or may not have any public comment. So the appearance of fairness issues, do any DRB members have you had the oral or written ex parte communication regarding this application?
No.
Okay, being none, we'd ask if basically the applicant has any issue with any DRB member or city staff in voting on this application.
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, we kind of did that premature before we can introduce yourself, Craig, but we'll give you an opportunity here. Okay, so if we do get some public sign-ins, we'll give them an opportunity to speak a little bit later in the presentation while we're discussing the project. But for now, we'll go ahead and turn it over to staff to present their findings and deliver their staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Design Review Board. We're here tonight for the consideration of a proposal we talked about before, titled the PAR Preliminary Plat, file number PLDR 210171, a 8-lot plat of a vacant 5.84 acre parcel for single family residential development. The site is located on the east side of Canterwood Boulevard, approximately 800 feet south of the intersection of Canterwood Boulevard and 122nd Street. The subject parcel is located in the city's R1 single-family zoning district and is surrounded on adjacent sides by R2 medium-density residential to the west, planned community development business park to the south, and unincorporated Pierce County to the north and east. The site slopes up sharply from the eastern edge of Canterwood Boulevard before plateauing. That's where the proposed lots will be. Roughly midway across the parcel, there's a slope down to the east at approximately 30 to 50% to a type 4 stream that flows north to south. Tonight's meeting has been appropriately noticed to the public. We received one public comment that was provided in response to the notice. That comment was related to site distance and traffic related concerns, not elements of the design review portion of this. So the comment has been added to the file and has been directed to the engineering reviewer. The applicant has proposed alternatives to 2 specific requirements in the design manual to be reviewed here tonight, both of which are related to improvements required to provide access on the site from Canterwood Boulevard. So the first one that we will begin with is 1799-160A, related to retention of significant trees within 30 feet of the property line abutting street right-of-way within the enhancement corridor. On the subject site, there are presently 63 significant trees within the area the specific requirement covers. Of those, one tree is currently dead, so would not be considered a significant tree any longer. 16 are proposed to be removed to allow access to the site, and 14 others are to be removed for frontage and site-related improvements. The applicant has proposed a planting plan to replace those removed trees, as well as remove existing invasive species. In total, the proposal will add 96 new trees to the enhancement corridor, of which all will be from the city's preferred species list. The landscaping chapter of the code requires at least 80% for that figure. So this is exceeding that. The proposed replacement appears to meet the requirements listed in the design manual 1799-240E, which is related to the replacement of trees. It states that significant trees should be replaced at a ratio of 1.5 times diameter. So based on the proposed sizing of these trees to be planted in comparison with what has been removed, I believe this would meet that. We don't have the specific figure for that, but I'm sure the applicants can provide that if needed. Additionally, the proposal meets the sizing requirements of trees within the perimeter landscaping areas, as I previously mentioned. Staff believes that the proposal meets the intent of the general requirement, as the removal of these trees was necessitated by the requirement for frontage improvements, as well as the need to provide access to the site. So there's really no way around it if you're looking to develop this site. The second item to be discussed tonight is the specific requirement under 1799-240C, which notes that within that specific requirement, it notes that cuts and fills on a site shall be balanced. So in order to connect the on-site access roadway with Canterwood Boulevard, a greater amount of export was created from the cut needed than what could otherwise be balanced on the site, while still maintaining the natural topography elsewhere on the site. So that's that requirement is the maintain natural topography requirement. As noted earlier, the site slopes up sharply starting at the eastern edge of Canterwood Boulevard. The cut is needed to provide access, obviously, while still meeting all engineering requirements and geotechnical recommendations. The proposed grading on the sites includes some of the cut material and uses fill in lots 3 through 7 in tract A, and the lots utilize terracing and daylight basements in their kind of layouts and design in order to maintain the natural topography to the greatest extent practical. Staff believes that the overall proposal meets the intent of the general requirement, although unbalanced cuts and fills are unavoidable based on the unique topography of the site adjacent to Canterwood Boulevard. Additional design elements were reviewed by staff and determined to meet the design standards prescriptively and thus may be approved administratively. Should the board agree with the analysis described in section 6 of the staff report, staff has prepared suggested findings and recommendations for the board to consider adopting this evening, which recommend approval of the requested alternative design review. This concludes my synopsis of the power preliminary plat design review, and I'm happy to address any questions prior to the applicant's presentation.
Okay, any questions from DRB members? Okay, we'll turn it over to the applicant. Craig, introduce yourself and who you're with, and the floor is yours.
Absolutely. My name is Craig Deaver. I'm principal here at CES Northwest. I got Dan Smith sitting to my right. He's off screen. He's the project engineering project manager for that. And then Don Babineau is also here. He's a land planner for our firm as well that's assigned to this project. So they're here to listen and maybe give me a few, if I miss anything, to nudge me in the right direction. So appreciate you hearing us on this matter. I apologize for the actual developer not being at this meeting. They were occupied with, unfortunately, another project today. So I'm flying solo anyway, so to speak. So I'll jump right in here. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to staff. We agree with their decision, and we agree there's nothing really that needs to be. There was nothing significant in the staff report that we disagreed with. We agreed to the conditions of approval, or the recommended conditions of approval, and would like to see this thing move to a hearing with your approval as well. So as noted, I'll jump right in here. The project description: the proposed 8-lot plat is located on Canterwood Road, is located on the site with the existing conditions require adaptive design in order to best comply with the intent of the city regulation codes and regulations. There are 2 regulated design elements which we're requesting the board to review, which I know Jeremy kind of laid this out, but I will do the same. So the first is the adaptive design element required consideration is the removal and replacement of existing trees within the enhancement corridor north of the proposed plat entrance, which is, we call it Road A in our site plan. I'm hoping that you have the site plans in front of you and are able to follow along. There are approximately 63 trees in the enhancement corridor. 32 of those trees are proposed to be retained. And then we are going to plant 65 trees off the native preferred species list within the frontage corridor, which is open space track C. So I'm hoping you can see that. And I would also like to reference our landscape plan that we took considerable time and effort to provide, which is sheets L4 and L7. So I'm hoping you have those in front of you as well, so you can kind of see our proposal and see that we are providing, substantial trees and shrubs in order to provide, and what we believe to be an even better situation than what's currently exists along the frontage. As previously noted by Jeremy, there are some dead, deceased trees. Those will be removed along with any invasive species such as blackberries or whatever occurs. Replanted areas will be restored with amended soils and native understory and plant species. So again, I'd really like you to, as far as this is, reference sheets L4 and L7 of the landscape plan, and I think that depicts the situation fairly well. We do have a little bit of material that's going to be removed from the right-of-way because of the frontage improvements, and that's all to the south, and that's also going to be enhanced with landscaping as well. So the second design element is maintaining the natural topography as regulated under 17.99.240. And as you know, the site is elevated approximately 10 to 12 feet above Canterwood Boulevard with an existing retaining wall that is mostly located within the right-of-way of Canterwood Boulevard. We are going to be relocating a portion of that wall approximately 100 feet and extending it at approximately 80 to get the frontage road improvements installed. So just to give you a little bit, it's not really part of this grade, but I want you to understand that we're doing our best to maintain the existing grades, the existing walls, and the existing features along this corridor. And in turn, is which will requiring us to have to cut about 7,000 yards of material off this site. And the proposed grading utilizes a combination of terrace 6-foot maximum walls and daylight basements along the rear of lots 3 through 7 to maintain the natural topography to the greatest extent feasible. This concept is similar to multi-level building cross-section figure shown in the article 3 of the design manual on page, and I can 17.99.240.c, page 17-192 of that manual. And we utilize that as kind of our guide for grading this site. So, and I think, do you have that code? I'm sure you're all familiar with it. So, also the design, it's important. I need to really mention that our geotechnical consultant, along with the city, has also reviewed the slope stability, the grading, and it follows the geotechnical consultant's recommendation, which in this case is Geo Resources Incorporated. As I mentioned earlier, in order to provide the approved frontage improvements, a portion of the existing wall within a right-of-way will need to be relocated. I know this is a little redundant, but I think it's very important to note that we did everything we can to maintain that grade and not impact the frontage any more than we had to, and also leaving the buffers to the south, to the north, and also to the west as much intact as possible to comply with the city intent for maintaining the natural topography and also maintaining the trees that are required on this project. At this time, I'm open to answer any questions or concerns you may have. If I believe that's what comes next at these meetings, or unless you let me know if you got any questions, or Jeremy, if you have anything, please, we're ready and willing to answer anything you might have.
Okay, thank you, Craig. So let's maybe begin with tree retention, since we're looking at really two issues: tree retention first, and then we'll look at maintaining natural topography. So do any DRB members have any questions, comments I'd like to make relative to the tree retention? I'm presuming everybody has the package in front of them somehow to access.
If not, I can pull it up. I can pull up the documents if you need to and share them with you.
I have all of them that I'm looking at.
So if someone needs to share a screen, Michelle, you would be able to allow them to do that, right?
Everybody has screen sharing abilities.
Okay. All right. Well, let's maybe I'll share my screen then to start with, just so we got something up to talk about. Okay, everybody see my screen here? Let's get this.
Yes.
Okay, make it a little smaller. So I'm looking at sheet L4. So this is the landscape plan. And so on the northern portion of the site, on the right of way, or at least on the property adjacent to right of way, is where it looks like you're doing a significant amount of planting here. Some enhancements along the north side. And then the there's retainage of existing vegetation that's in this zone, and then some enhancements down here. Is that correct, Craig?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. And then around and then I wanted to point to the south along the perimeter, we're also saving
All
the
of this.
substantial portion of those trees, and there's no enhancement or anything proposed in that area at this time.
Okay. Well, I think we have a lot of precedents that we've established in how we've looked at these in the past. I'll just start with maybe my comments, and that is when a site is newly developed, a lot of times I guess the intent of the code is really to look for those, when they say significant, in essence, specimens trees that are pretty substantial. Is there a way to save them? Is there a way to sort of work around them? A lot of times, we expect within these buffers, to be probably more than really are there. And more often than not, if we can save half, that's fantastic, and develop a planting plan that can repopulate that. And I think it's more evident just south of this property with the hospital site. That entire bank for that was replanted, and in a matter of 10, 15 years, that property looks significantly different. And so I think that's something we've been looking at, is what can we do to actually improve it over time. And I think some of the imagery looking at what's there now is, I don't necessarily get that strong feeling that there's a lot of like specimen trees there, whereas I think this planting plan could help change that in the future, its look and feel. So that's my comment. Anybody else?
I did notice that it seemed like a very small portion of the trees were going to be larger than the 8 foot. Most of the trees were all going to be about the same height. And I know that the topography will minimize some of that, but it just seemed like only 5 trees out of all of those that are going to be taller was a little bit of a small quantity. And that just kind of, I don't know, sometimes when things are planted, it all looks the same for quite a long time until it matures. So there can be an element of that that's a little bit, I don't know, not as pleasing as the natural environment. Maybe that's it. But otherwise, it looks like it's pretty substantial in my opinion, and more than required.
Thank you, Amy. Anybody else? Any other DRB members have some comments? Okay. So how about this? Before we sort of vote on this a la carte, why don't we talk about topography first? Because I think there may be some overlap in the discussion a little bit. Looking at this, obviously our eyes initially, not so much the cut and fill. We generally like to see that balance as it acknowledges that you're really trying to work with the topography and not dramatically changing it. But oftentimes it really gets down to some retaining walls and getting some buildable area for the development. And I like to see on the east side and south side this double wall assembly, where I think we were looking at. Let's see if I go back to the civil drawings here.
There you go.
Okay, so on this one, I appreciate your keynotes here that correspond around your plan, and then you have a top of wall, bottom of wall, and delta. And so looking at this, basically everything in here, I don't know if they necessarily correspond with your cross sections. The cross sections may need to be updated. As I was looking at that, saying, okay, I'm not quite tracking with that, but I'll take these to be more the design intent right now. And I didn't find any, I didn't take any exception with what you're doing here on the south and the eastern part on the backside of these lots. What I was maybe curious about as it relates to this area where you're retaining trees, I don't know if any other DRB members have either had a chance to look at Google Earth Street View or been up Canterwood Boulevard and specifically looked at that wall that's there now. my initial impression of that wall is that it's not that attractive. It does get pretty tall in one spot. And I think since they're going to move it over in order to get some frontage improvements, sidewalks and so forth, it might be an opportunity in this area where it's keynoted to be at 8 feet and 9 feet plus, and specifically some of these areas that are close to that entrance. And I think they're going to be basically right up against the sidewalk that's coming here. Would it be an opportunity to consider a step location in lieu of retaining some of the trees? And so here comes the dilemma, right? If you push it back and you replant it where maybe this side of the entrance is replanted similar, it's sort of a trade-off. So I'm just bringing this idea up because I think the wall is right in your face, and we do have some examples in the city, specifically coming up to Burnham at that roundabout by the Sportsman Club that is excessively high, and there's just no way around that. But I don't think we would like to see that as the norm moving forward. If we can, if there's some way to soften those impacts a little bit. And again, I think this wall that's there now it could be more visually pleasing, maybe not let it get up so high, or if how landscaping sort of covers it up a bit. At the hospital site, I know that the development of the buildings at the hospital sit much further back, but there are no walls. Obviously, it just pitches up the bank. It's fairly steep and it's all planted. So it has a little more of a natural look to it. So again, my comments on that. Any other DRB comments relative to that front wall or any wall?
I totally agree with you, Darren. That was my main concern, is that wall driving up Canterwood would just be in many ways an eyesore. So any ways to be able to soften it or break it up would be very beneficial. Especially when you're talking a block style, it's not pretty and it doesn't really blend with our city much. So anything we can do to lessen that wall would be very important to me.
Okay.
I have a question about that. With that frontage improvement, I realize we're a little outside this, but it relates to the wall there. With the frontage improvement and sidewalk, that entire wall will be set back to be able to incorporate the sidewalk there. And will there be continued street trees as in a landscape buffer between the sidewalk and the road?
No.
Okay, so just to the south of that on Canterwood, there is a landscape buffer and street trees, if I'm correct. So that would end and the sidewalk would be right along Canterwood.
No, there's a buffer, isn't there? Yeah, we have a buffer, and then there's a sidewalk. There's a planting buffer, but I don't believe we propose any trees in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is just in terms of that wall and softening that look. Some trees in that space would help with that, because I agree that is a harsh wall as you drive by it.
Yeah. So a couple, if I may, I don't want to speak out of turn, so tell me to be quiet and I will. But the issue here with this wall is that it meanders in right away and then it meanders off right away to the south. And so once we touch it and start messing with it, so right there, right, you see where it curves there?
Mm-hmm.
It tapers on to the adjacent property. So I don't entirely control it. And so the next thing I'd like to say is I'm not opposed to stepping the wall, but the problem is that wall is really in there for Canterwood Boulevard, and the wall right now is entirely, at least adjacent to our site, been placed in the right of way as required by the city design standards. If we tier it, then a portion of that wall it'll be a structural wall, which will be located in that buffer, which, as you guys know, there will be some planting issues, of course, but also that'll be a structural element of that roadway, which will be on private property. So there'll either need to be some sort of easement or something that will allow maintenance of that wall onto the property, or for the city to come in and maintain that if there's ever an issue.
So Craig, you're saying that you have to relocate it and it still gets relocated. This is the property line that's here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're still in the right of way. right here. And if we did have to step it, this wall would stay potentially here, but lower. And then the second wall would be on the property.
Yeah, a tiered wall would place it because you would have to be at least the height of the wall back from the other wall, which is, you know, if you did two 4-footers, you would have, you know, a 4-foot wall, then a 4-foot gap, then another 4-foot wall.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I can't speak for Jeff Langhelm and his group, you know, at Public Works, but, you know, it seems like there could be something that could be done there. You know, I know there's lots of examples within the right of way where the walls are, you know, pretty tall, and we've actually had some pretty terse discussions about why Public Works, you know, decides to do it that way, and the design manual says another way. And so, you know, I think from a design standpoint, again, we can't speak to, you know, what Public Works would allow or not allow, but it seems like if we could step that wall in these zones, and I don't know if it needs to be down in this area. Obviously, it looks like this is that's the existing. Is it in this position here still?
Yeah,
or you
if you
relocate
could,
there?
if you don't mind, would you mind, do you have my civil plans? If you could go to sheet C or go to sheet 3 of the 19 sheet set. There, that, I think if that's sheet 3, I think that,
This sheet.
yeah, you can see the wall down here in the southwest corner. You can really see it there. If you zoom in on, can you zoom in on that portion there?
Yeah.
Is it 10 feet tall in that corner? Yeah. So
This
you
is
can
the
kind of-
existing wall.
Yeah, and you can see it how it tapers, and then the darker wall is our wall, and then that right there is the end of the existing wall, and the darker wall is our proposed wall, and we're just kind of shifting that wall to be more parallel, excuse me, to the right-of-way line.
Okay. Okay. Well, I know that the existing wall probably is also the same height you're talking about. It looks tall, where it's getting in the 8-9 feet plus. So,
And it's not just 8-9 feet, it does slope up from there as well. So it does look like a rather, you know, you have all this vegetation up there, and then you have slope, and then the wall, and it's rather looming over Canterwood there.
okay. Well, I guess the question we have, I'll go back to the landscaping plan. I think it's a little easier to see everything. You know, and maybe this is, first we would ask of, you know, the DRB, if the wall is it's currently designed right at the right of way. And again, we have allowed little taller walls here and there from time to time, but most often they've been located in the back of the site where just nobody's going to see them. So in this case, it's all but that. You know, it's right out in plain view. We're only really talking about maybe a little mow strip or a little bit of planting and a sidewalk right next to it. So you'll see it in its glory. Craig, is this going to be a brand new block wall or relocating the existing material?
I believe we're going to have to make it a brand new wall.
Okay. Okay. So I guess in that case, it's if the wall in this area, if it were stepped, you know, what we're sort of conceding is any trees in this area, if that topography needed to be changed, you know, probably through this zone, that we would be losing more of those existing trees in that zone. I guess my thought on it would be that if this is planted here, we could maybe replicate some of that in here. And I think a better long-term solution would be lower walls. If it could be done, say, with 2 4-footers and step back and landscaping, it seems like be a softer impact here long-term. And I think that we're already looking at changing the grading here with some enhancement with landscaping here. So again, that's my thought on it. John's already commented. I don't know if Brianne, you have anything, or Marlene. I don't know, Marlene, can you see anything on your phone?
Sorry. Yes, I can see. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't see well enough to say I can redesign it for you right here. Yeah, I think we have tried to minimize those tall walls. I guess the fact that you're doing so much significant work on the site maybe gives us an opportunity to minimize those walls.
So can I ask a quick question? So what you're suggesting is that we go down, basically remove all the trees there, knock that slope area down to kind of match what's going onto our site, and then putting in a tiered wall through there, right? So all those trees would go. We would do a tiered wall system, rockery, whatever it would be, and then replant that area with trees.
Well, looking
Or
here at
shrub.
your keynotes, you're basically saying, you know, this wall, you know, in this height is, you know, 8.5 feet up. And then, you know, we're basically in that 9.6, you know, running along here. So it almost, if we were to look at, you know, splitting that in half, and as you said, you know, you come back 4 feet, you know, I guess it'd be like probably laying it in here. Craig, do you think, and again, this, we're just, you know, sort of asking a question, if you cut this section in here while leaving the topography in here, I mean, are all these trees that are even on what would be the eastern side of this zone also in jeopardy?
Yes, because as you move the wall back, you're moving it into a hillside that's even taller than where you're leaving it. So you're moving it, I mean, it's 4 or 5 feet taller where the new wall, where you're suggesting to move the wall back. So that wall will have to be even taller. So instead of an 8-foot wall, you're looking at a 11, 12-foot probably tall total wall, but it's tiered. And that's why I was suggesting kind
I
of
see.
knocking the knob off, because really there's a kind of a top, if you're right where your hand is, that's a perfect, there's a knob right there.
Yeah,
Kind of the high point. If we cuff that off, we remove all the trees, tier 2 walls, and then replant it. And, you know, trees don't really go that well with walls. So we'd be looking at some sort of wall friendly plants.
how does your lot 8 relate from a topographic standpoint to this area? Does it sit lower or
Yes,
at grade?
it is lower by about 5, 6, 7 feet. Yeah.
This is lower than this,
Yes.
and you have a wall here?
Yes, I do.
Well,
To
see
save
that.
the trees as well, to save the trees.
Well, that makes a lot of sense what we're saying. You know, I honestly, I know
I
it sounds
agree.
harsh, but I'm thinking we take this nub off of here and you wouldn't need this wall and we can make this lower and replant this like that. I think it's totally a better solution. But
Yeah, I think early
I'm
on,
only one member. So,
no, I agree. And we even, I mean, I don't want to, I'm not here to, we did propose something like that at the time, and we were, it indicated we had to save the tree corridor. What is it? An
Enhancement corridor.
to the best of our ability.
yeah.
I would like to note that Larry Bradbury has logged on, so he's attending the meeting as well. Sorry for the interruption.
Great. Better late than never. That's good. Good. All right. Well, so any more thought, I guess, from members on that? I was going to bring up Google Earth here and just kind of like maybe even throw that little street view in there just for a second. I might be able to just pop it over there. Here, I'll just, I know you can see my screen, so I'll just drag it over here. This is the wall we're talking about that's there now, right?
I don't,
And
We're not able to see your street view.
you can't see it?
No,
Nope.
we're still seeing the plan set.
No, yeah.
Huh. Maybe I gotta get all the way over.
You might have
I
just
don't know.
shared, you might have just shared the plan set window. You might have to stop sharing and reshare.
Let's try that. Let me just try that again. All right. Now we'll try.
I can see it. Yep.
Can you see it now?
Mhm.
All right.
we can see it.
All right. So again, I think the get this to focus in here a little bit.
Can I make just a statement while you're going up this hill really quick? I want to point out that the road is not, the existing improvements are not symmetrical with the actual right of way. So this road actually diverges from the center line of the right of way, and the wall diverges away or towards the away from the right of way, and we're putting it back parallel to the right of way. So
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I think though that the, I mean, as you kind of look up even through here, you know, you can see how it climbs up. But again, I'm not, this image was taken, what, in 18? So, you know, 4 years ago plus. But you can see a few of the firs that are in here, but still a lot of, you know, little scrub stuff that's in here. And so, again, I think we would be looking at the improvement with a mow strip and then a sidewalk right up against something like this. And again, if they were in the 4-foot high range and you took that down a little bit, maybe we can even minimize it. You could get it done with, say, 1 6-foot wall, you know, setting back, you know, if you cut more of this out. So let me go back to the, you know, to the drawing, and then okay. Well, my thought on it is that, you know, having a tall wall here and then another wall here where it steps back down to save these trees, while I think it's commendable, if we were talking about some really special species in here, then I'd say, you know, let's do our best to keep them. But I think that this in time will be beautiful, probably with even in like a 5-year window filling in nicely. And it seems like we could get something similar like that in here by taking this knoll out of this. So that's my take on it.
So I have one question. The roof line of the house that's going to be there. So it's going to be daylight basement, correct?
that one's not a daylight. That's a flat padded site.
Okay, so if you were driving down Canterwood and you had a 6-foot wall with 10-foot trees, 8 to 10-foot trees, how much of the roof line and building would you see, since it's kind of down a little bit lower off the knob?
You wouldn't see much of that house.
So that to me is probably the more important. So you aren't staring at a side of a house versus the trees that are there right now. So I agree with Darren. If you flatten the nub and so get a smaller wall and then add in trees so you block the view of the house, I think that is superior than what we have right now.
Yeah, so just to be clear, you under the current scenario, the house would be pretty much obscured by the walls and the trees that are being saved and the shrubs and stuff that are being replanted. If we come in and knock that knob down and get rid of the walls and lessen the walls, you're going to see more of the house under the suggested scenario.
Until the trees are drawn in, though, right? Or grown in.
Until the home, but I still think you're going to see more of the house regardless if we take the knob down. I just want to be very clear on that. And I like the idea of taking the knob down and getting rid of the walls, but I want to be very clear. You're going to see more of the house in the scenario you just suggested.
But, to be fair, Craig, would you say that we would see maybe a similar amount of the house on lot 8 as we would on lot 1?
Sure.
Because this is 278 right out at the road, and there's a 278 contour. It's pretty much right at grade.
Yes, you'll see about a similar amount. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it'd be a consistent frontage, and we've got a bunch of development that's happened up on the west side and in Gig Harbor North over time, and it's a little shocking when we take out some trees. The community does notice, and we've had definitely some heated discussions about that. But in time, if it's a well-planted plan that really adds back in significant amount of vegetation, then I think we can really see those benefits within a short window, within a 5-year, span. We're starting to see that, and it's pretty evident if you go around the harbor. Been on the DRB myself since about 06, and we've seen some projects that were done in that time, and you really you're seeing some benefits of those landscaping plans that were planted over a decade ago. Okay, any other comments from design members?
I would just add, I like the plan that we've been discussing where we would knock the knob off and reduce the size of the walls.
And would that remove the wall on the lot 8 side entirely?
It's difficult to say. It would certainly significantly lessen it. We still may end up needing a 2 or 4 foot wall, but I think it would significantly lessen it. So.
And when we were talking about knocking that knob down, can you help quantify what are we talking about? How far are we talking pulling that down?
The current pad is at 274. There's a high point of about a 280.5. So you're talking 6 feet, 7 feet of right there, right where that hand is. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That will be cut out and lessened down to about a 274. Where's our road grade? You're still going to have, you're still going to have a wall there of, 6 to 8 feet, and it'll have to be tiered. And the problem I see here, I'm fine doing, the problem I see is getting the city public works on board for a tiered wall, partly on public right of way and the other part on private property.
If
Same.
you knock the knob off, if you knock the knob off, do you need to have the tiered wall or not?
I will need to have a tiered wall still, yes, because the knob is only getting rid of the mound that sits up so high. And as I move the wall back in, that's going to help with the height of that wall. So you're still going to be looking at probably 2 4-foot high stacked walls. They'd probably be rockery, and they could probably be rockery at that point instead of that big sheer face that you're looking at now.
Well, definitely a natural rock wall would be more aesthetically pleasing than the block wall.
I would agree.
Well, I think, again, I don't want to speak for Jeff and what they do at Public Works, but I think if we ask city staff to, have a little communication back and forth, I'm sure we can find some way to do this if we wanted to make that recommendation.
Okay, I will get in contact with them.
Yeah, walls being at 4 feet high, I think that seems to always be kind of a typical threshold of not being structural at some point. Maybe the lower one is, but maybe the other one is almost like a landscape wall because it's so short. And maybe, maybe Public Works would be all right with that. Okay, any other comments? So I knew these two issues would tie together a little bit, so. Okay, let's go back to the 2 points, findings and city recommendations. So the retaining significant trees, so we talked about that. We felt it was the plan as proposed was a good alternative. In regards to looking at the natural site conditions, I think we're maybe asking that where the walls got a little bit tall at the right of way, that we could look at maybe having a step wall condition there by allowing more of the grading to be adjusted there, and thus losing some of those existing trees that would have been retained. And then we'd be asking for a planting plan, alternative planting plan that would be similar to what was located on the north side of the entry drive to the site. I don't know if this is something, Jeremy, if we were to, in essence, we're asking for a little bit of a change, if this would be something that we would necessarily need to see again, or we can write in our findings, in essence, sort of design guidance on how to proceed forward. Your thoughts on that?
I think we can craft the findings in a way where it would cover what if it moves forward with tiered walls, what that proposal would be as well within the conditions of it.
Okay. Okay. So we still handle these two separately and have some sort of language that's within the significant tree retention that speaks to the natural site conditions.
Mhm.
I think they're linked together a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I can figure it out. Figured out the findings.
So, John, what do you think? Should we ask DRB members here if we can come up with a motion? Does anybody think they can craft something?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to blend them together in many ways though, too, just because we're talking about removing a whole bunch of vegetation, which kind of changes the first one a tad. I think we know where we're going, but yeah, it's hard to put into words.
Okay, so in regards to tree retention, we really are good with the plan as proposed. Maybe we could say that was fine. Okay, we could approve that with the staff's findings because we didn't take exception with it, other than I think there was a comment relative to maybe the planting height and so forth initially, how that might look. But is that correct with everybody, that we really didn't take exception with the plan as proposed?
Correct.
So maybe what we do is make a recommendation to approve that as proposed, and this area that gets affected by the wall is handled in the second motion about natural topography. Okay, get to the, where are we here? Okay, so first one that I'll just start, kind of get the things rolling. Then I would make a motion that the DRB finds the proposed design alternative meets the intent of the general requirement of the municipal code in those sections and represents an equivalent or superior design solution to what would otherwise be achieved by rigidly applying the specific requirements of the municipal code. And then I'd ask for a second.
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. So any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, would it be appropriate to amend that if further trees are removed from what we've seen on the current plan, that they also be treated under the same ratios and rules of replacement?
So Marlene, are you trying to hedge this on this future discussion? We're going to talk about this area.
I'm just wondering if it needs to be part of this part of the motion. You know, we are accepting as planned if none of the other trees are taken away, but just to add to it, that just so that I guess I would like to cover us so that it could be an administrative review possibly, rather than us having to review it. So I guess I just want to put the language in there that they, you know, that the replacement trees, you know, we will consider it equivalent if the replacement trees are, you know, also are part of the new landscape plan.
Okay. So a friendly amendment to my motion to include language that would require that if there are any other significant trees that through the course of the project had to be removed that were not a part of this plan, that they be replaced in kind with the similar planting plan that has been proposed in those new areas. Did I capture that right, Marlene?
You sure did.
Okay, okay, so that's been amended. So any other discussion or amendments for the motion? Okay, we'll call for the question. All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Okay, I think that was unanimous. I think. Okay, so we got through the first one, and then, so on the natural site conditions, again, I think this is, the staff's findings basically said it is similar to the other one, meets the intent of the code. So, but moving back to our proposed plan, what we're suggesting, and I'll try to describe this verbally without necessarily, having, a diagram that really talks about it, but we are referring to drawing sheet 4 of 19 in the civil drawing set. And we're looking at the existing right-of-way retaining wall that is being relocated to make way for frontage improvements. Now, I'm going to just kind of talk through this, Jeremy, because I'm going to try to start a motion, and we'll see if we can actually craft something here that we'd like to see as proposed. We'd like to see the design modified to be a terraced retaining wall, preferably in natural stone, and concurrently the topography of the area east of the right-of-way and south of the entry drive may be allowed to be lowered, and subsequently those existing trees be removed in order to achieve the tiered wall, retaining wall assembly at the right-of-way, an attempt to make walls at 6 feet high or lower as it faces the right-of-way. In addition to that, the area then would be replanted similarly to the planting plan that has been proposed for the north side of the entry driveway along the right-of-way. That's about as much words as I can throw in there. Okay, so I'll ask.
Yeah, it made total sense.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been seconded, and then this time we'll give that second to Larry. I think the first one was you, John. Okay, any further discussion on that motion?
If the Public Works Department isn't willing to support the tiered wall, would the board be supportive of what is currently proposed? So leaving that grade the same, retaining the vegetation there.
Are you suggesting, John, that we would amend that so we'd be happy with either or?
I mean, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Oops. Okay. Make sure I got the right ones. Was that you, Jeremy? I'm sorry.
Yes, it was.
I'm sorry. I guess my preference would be to make a recommendation on what we'd like to see happen, and then sort of put the onus on a little bit on Public Works to respond to our recommendation, because I'd like to see them find a solution for this, or at least accept the solution for this. It seems like there's room to work with here to make this happen. And that existing wall that's there now is not very attractive, and this is a great opportunity to do something a little nicer.
Okay.
Yeah, if
Okay.
Public Works says no to it, I'd like them to come back to us for other ideas, other options, personally.
Concur.
Okay, great. Okay, any more discussion? I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 That's unanimous. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing. And I think that went pretty well. I appreciate everybody's comments on that. Sometimes these seem maybe like they're simple and then they end up being a little more complicated, you know, in our discussions. Craig, do you think you have enough based on the proposal here and our
Yeah.
recommendations?
Yes, I do. I think we're sketching it out, but I just really I want to make sure you guys are aware that we don't control the southwesterly portion of that wall. It's on the hospital property, and we're going to tie into it, but we can't manipulate it without their approval. And we'll do what we can, but that's just something. So I don't want you guys to drive by there and say, why did they remove that wall and redo that wall? We don't control that. Okay. So
Right.
anyway, I appreciate your time on this too. And I really do appreciate you being able to do this over Zoom or whatever we're on today. So
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, appreciate that. Thank you, Greg. I guess if there's nothing more, we can
Oh,
be
sorry, could I
excused.
make a request just for the applicant and maybe future applicants? This is an issue we've looked at a lot, the grading issues, and I appreciate that the applicant did give us cross sections. What I would like to see on those and they showed, natural grade versus finished grade. That's great. I would like to see a very clear definition of where in the plan those sections are actually taken. And I would also like to see the buildings incorporated into the sections, because I think when we are trying to make those determinations about how you're working with your existing topography, that's kind of that's what we want to see. So in the future, I want to see the buildings in there, and I want to see a clear line that shows me where you're pulling the section from.
So part of that, the buildings aren't a requirement of the preliminary plat. Those will come after the final plat. So there's no requirement for the applicant to provide anything like that at this point in the platting process.
Just, you get questions about, well, what part of the roof do we see? And how much, the judgment that they're working with the topography, the buildings are kind of part of that. So it doesn't have to be exactly what they're going to do, but just to see, an outline, a hint, a sketch. I mean, I think we can understand that what they're going to show us isn't set in stone, but they do, in order for them to produce that civil set, they had to decide where all the floor levels are. So at least they could kind of show us that.
Okay, Marlene, thank you. Maybe again, we can chat more about that with city staff, and maybe that's something we'd like to see in just some simple outlines of, just sort of max structure allowable or something like that. Obviously, it's well in advance of any building plans or design, but I appreciate having that information as well, Marlene. Okay, anything else for Craig before we excuse him? Okay, Craig, thank you very much.
yeah, thank you all too. Appreciate it. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other business, Jeremy or Michelle?
Just the upcoming meeting, looks like it's a bylaw review, chair election, and a possible pre-application meeting for Erickson Street Commercial Office Building.
Okay,
And that's October 13th.
all right. And do we have is there any update on the last DRB seat? Filling that?
They are appointing those. I can't remember the exact date, but I believe it's the Monday before that meeting, so it'll be October 10th. They'll be appointing the new DRB members.
Okay, great. And is there anybody that's currently on the DRB where your term is coming up? You'll no longer be here after that time period? Anyone?
Yeah, sorry, I
Okay.
have to unmute. I had a conversation with Carl, and I think what we decided is that when my seat is filled, you will be welcoming someone to fill my seat.
All right. So do we have any heads up, Michelle? Do we know, do we have, so there'd be two, there's a vacancy, and then I presume Marlene's seat. Do we have potential of two new DRB members that will be appointed?
I don't know yet. All I know is
Okay.
that they're interviewing people and they're supposed to be appointing people. I can't remember how many applied.
Okay. All right, Marlene, then I'll just say this. If there is a seat, if your seat is filled before then, and this happens to be your last DRB meeting, I appreciate your comments. And if not, then you'll be at the next meeting. So, and I'm sure we'll see you
Perhaps
downtown.
I'll just bomb in to thank everybody for their service, and staff and all the volunteers, some of them who are not with us. You're all awesome to be doing this work, and I'll thank you very much.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Okay, if someone wanted to make a motion to adjourn. You're all muted.
I motion to adjourn.
All right, it's been seconded. Anyone?
Yep, second.
It's been seconded. Okay, all in favor of adjourning?
Ah,
Aye.
Aye.
Have a great one.
Okay,
everybody.
so adjourned. We'll
night.
see everybody on October 13th.
Yep, enjoy fall.
All right. Have a good evening, everyone.